Okay, so this class is sort of a catching up class, so some things that we haven't talked about before. So we're going to talk about stings, we're going to talk about what's under your hive. I'm going to talk some more about nukes and packages, and I'm also going to talk about the bee community and what the advantages to that is. So the first thing we're going to talk about stings. There are two questions you will get as a beekeeper all the time. One is, do you ever get stung? And the other one is, are you making honey? And so, yes, you probably will get stung. So you have to remember that bees they sting to protect their hive, or if you're being too intrusive. So if you're in the hive and they're having a really bad day, you might get stung. If they're sick, you might get stung. Um, and when I say too intrusive, things like if you put your hand on them, they might sting you. That's usually how I get stung. Is there'll be a bee on my bag that has all my bee supplies in it, and I'll just grab it and not look, and I'll get stung. I mean, it's typically how I get stung. Um, and when they sting you, remember when we were talking about the pheromones, we were talking about that they leave a scent behind that tells the other bees to sting here. It's like calling in the reserves to help them. And the scent that they leave behind is very similar to bananas. So if you eat a lot of bananas and you get sweaty, you might find that the bees are like coming at you, and you can get stings that way, just because they think somebody's already stung you and it's telling them to come and sting you. So and bees, when they sting you, their stinger is barbed. So when it goes in, and with us, our skin is thick enough that the barb can stick in there, and then when they try to pull away, they're actually pulling the whole stinging apparatus and part of their intestines and stuff out too, and so they're going to die. But part of what stays behind is the venom sac, and it's actually set up to continue to pump venom into you. So that's something that you need to be aware of. Like if you wear gloves, like rubber gloves or something like that, they can sting through it, but a lot of times the barb doesn't go in, and so you might get a little bit of a sting, but it won't be like stuck in there. And they can sting through regular gloves. They can sting through clothing. I get stung through my blue jeans, or I wear white painter's pants because they've got lots of nice pockets and stuff. And so I'll get stung through those from time to time, and sometimes I don't even notice, but I'll notice a little welt on my leg or something. So this is back to the diagram we had when we were talking about all the different kinds of glands and scents and things. And so you can see the area in the very back. See where it says poison sac and the Dufour gland, which nobody really knows what that does. But it's in the very back. You can see where the whole poison and stinging apparatus is on the worker bee. Now, drones don't have stingers. They don't sting, and the queen stinger isn't barbed, so it's a different kind of process. So when we're talking about these stings, we're really talking about stings from worker bees. And then down on the right, you'll see in more detail, there's the sting. You can see where the gland is. It's actually going to be where they can mark you. You can see where the venom sac is. And then on the very left, this is what it looks like when it gets pulled out. So you can see the stinger and the venom sac. And those are like way bigger than they really are. When a bee stings you, they're bending their body to be able to sting you. So if one of the reasons that we smoke them is that they'll think there's a fire, and so they'll eat a lot, and because they think they're going to be on the road, and they can't sting if they've got stuff in their stomach. They have to regurgitate it before they can bend to sting you. So that's one of the reasons. So when they get and the stinger is one of these things where it sort of like digs into the skin and gets in there deep enough. And then when they pull away, you can see there's a picture of a stinger in somebody's finger down there. And that's kind of what they leave. So if you get stung, what do you need to know? So first of all, be prepared. Always assume that you're going to get stung somewhere along the way. pack your bee bag with some things that'll help you deal with the stings. So there's some bee sting topical medication you can get to help right away with the way that it, you know, it stings and hurts. Benadryl, I always have Benadryl caplets in my bee bag, because if I need, you know, if I start to feel a little woozy or something, I can always pop them open and just put them under my tongue, kind of get that going right away. An EpiPen, if you you know, if you can afford to have it. Um, and you know, especially if you don't know how you're going to react to a bee sting, quite frankly, every time it could be really different. EpiPens, you know, I don't know if you heard, a couple years ago there was a real problem because when the patent on the EpiPen was bought, ended up they went from like $100 to like $700, and now they're down to about $400. But if you go to something like goodrx.com, they have coupons and they can tell you where you can get an EpiPen for about $100 or $150. And it also depends on your insurance and everything. And as a beekeeper, you may be able to get an EpiPen. I have, and they come in a set, so you get two in a set. And I have a set. They're expired, but quite frankly, if I need them, I'm going to use them because, you know, it'd be better than not having them. And also make sure you have your phone with you. Make sure that you can call 911. That's always really important to have with you when you're out in the bee yard. So what do you do when you get stung? So the first thing to do is get the stinger out as fast as you can, because it's going to keep, if it's in there, it's going to keep pumping and pumping, and you're going to get lots more of that venom in you. And you can use like a hive tool or something. You know, you can even like use your fingernail and just sort of scratch it out. You can't really pull it exactly. You kind of just have to scratch it out. A credit card or the hive tool will work for that. And then smoke the area, because they're leaving a scent behind. It'll help a little bit. It might not help a lot. And one of the things that'll happen that you'll notice is if you get stung, there are going to be 6 more bees there almost instantly. So, you know, getting out of the way a little bit and getting it out of there and smoking it is really important. Get something on the sting area to deal with the swelling and the pain as soon as you can. And there are all kinds of things that you can use and things that you can put in your bee bag or, you know, might be around. So you see at the bottom, that's a plantain plant. And it's actually edible. The leaves are edible. And so what you do is you basically chew the plant up until it's kind of mushy. And then you can put that on wherever you get stung, and that'll help to start to relieve some of the pain and the swelling and all of that. I've been told that chewing tobacco works really well. You know, it takes a lot of the sting out, and it starts to help with the swelling and stuff like that. Mustard helps really well. Mustard has both turmeric and vinegar in it. And you could just like, you know, throw a couple mustard packets in your bee bag, and that'll help too. And then there's also the commercial sting medication. So on the right, you see something called Stingies. I have some of that, and it works pretty well to take the sting out as well. So there are 3 types of reactions that you get from a honeybee sting. There's a mild local reaction, there's a large local reaction, and then there's a systemic reaction. So a mild local reaction, this is kind of what happens to me is I get something called a mild local reaction. It's a relatively small area around the sting. It depends on where I'm stung, but a lot of times it looks just like a little bit of red and a little bit of bump, and you can see where the stinger went in. If I get stung on my hands, I get what I call hot dog fingers, which is the picture below. And a lot of times the reaction is related to how dehydrated I am. So if I've been out in the bee yard for a while and I'm sweating a lot, I'm going to get a bigger reaction than normally. And I don't know, on me, there isn't any other place really that will swell up like that except for my hands. But like everybody's a little bit different, and it'll start to improve in a couple of hours. So I have some things that I do to help treat it. You know, I do something at the site, I put something on it, or if I'll choose some plantain and stick it on there. As soon as I can, I'll get some ice on it. One of the things I might do is soak it in some Epsom salts and ice water, and that really helps a lot. Some baking soda on it will help. Vinegar will help. Meat tenderizer will help. You know, you kind of make a paste and put it on there. And one of my friends makes sea salt soap, and that actually helps a lot with my hands. I just put the lather, let it sit for a couple minutes, rinse it off, and that's been really helpful. So that's a small local reaction to it. You know, I never, if I get stung on the leg, you know, like if I don't remember to put the ties on the bottom of my pants or put my pants in my socks, it's not uncommon to have bees, you know, nurse bees that have fallen off the frame crawl up my leg, and I don't know they're there until they're above my knee, and then I'm getting stung. So, but you know, that's kind of common, and I don't really get a reaction to it. The one thing I'll say though is my family has osteoarthritis, and I get stung in my hands enough that I still have pretty good movement and stuff. If you looked at my sister or my mom, well, my mother's gone, but they're all my family, they all have, you know, the bigger knuckles and things at this age. And so that's actually been kind of a good thing. And I'm not going to talk about apitherapy, but that's one of the things that they use venom for. Okay, question, go ahead.
Hey, have you heard about putting like honey on the site of a bee sting? Does
Yeah.
that do?
Yep, you can do that as well. And it's, you know, honey is antibacterial. And so that works too. Yep. And honey for stings and burns and all that is really, really good. And in fact, in a lot of the hospitals now with burn cases, they're actually using honey. So, and it helps with, you know, the anti-inflammatory and, you know, all that. So yeah. Was there another question you want to just pipe up or a comment? I can't see the, do you see?
This is great, thank you.
Okay, cool. All right. So a large local reaction is, and this is unfortunate. This is my husband. He's also online. He's making faces, right? So what will happen is you'll get a much bigger reaction. It'll be like if you get a sting on the arm, it's like your whole bunch of your arm will swell up. Not just the local area, but the whole area. It will be still around wherever the sting was. So if you get stung on the left arm, you won't have anything showing up on the right arm. Okay, so it's going to be local to wherever you get stung. So this is what he looks like on the left. And then he got stung just a little bit, not even a lot. The stinger didn't go all the way in, but it was just under his nose. The bee was trying to go up his nose. And so he was able to get it out of there, but he had just a little bit of a sting. But you can see that's a pretty big reaction for not even a really serious sting. And that's not uncommon. And it'll actually continue to get bigger over the next 24 hours or so, as opposed to a small local reaction where it's like one and done, and that's as big as it's going to get, right? So it may take a few days for it to really resolve. So what do you do? The same thing, you know, if you're in the field, you get stuff on it right away. Ice packs really help a lot. Other kind of ointments. Part of the reaction is it's going to be itchy, and so having some kind of a hydrocortisone or calamine lotion on it will be helpful. Over the counter antihistamines will help. And then a pain reliever like ibuprofen, which is also an anti-inflammatory, will help. So those are some of the things you can do. Don't be scratching it and stuff because you can get cellulitis. You can, you know, cellulitis will happen if you get bacteria in there once it's been compromised. So you have to be careful again. And, you know, you can put honey on it too, and that'll also help. Now, systemic reactions don't happen very often, but they're the ones everybody worries about, right? So you will start to see things happening in places where you didn't get stung. So you'll develop hives. So if you get stung on the arm, you know, you might have hives on your chest or, you know, another part of your body. You know, itching and swelling away from the sting, in areas away from the sting. So not where the sting is. You know, you'll look flushed. You might have some swelling in your tongue and difficulty breathing, stomach cramping, vomiting, nausea, diarrhea, difficulty breathing. That's usually the big one. Dizziness or drop in blood pressure, and eventually unconsciousness and anaphylaxis. Um, and those things can generally occur in a few minutes of the sting. So if you've been stung and you're not really getting a reaction for a couple of minutes, you're probably okay. Don't panic. But it is possible that sometimes later on your body will start to react. It depends on what else is going on with your body at that time. If your immune system is compromised, or if you're kind of on the border of being allergic to something, it can push you over the edge. So this is really serious. So what do? The first thing you do is you call 911. Even before you use the EpiPen, you call 911 and you tell them you have an EpiPen, and they'll say, go ahead and use it or whatever. But, you know, really this first thing, that's why you absolutely have got to have a phone with you. And if you don't have an EpiPen, like I said, I carry Benadryl, because opening those capsules up and putting them under your tongue, or the liquid gels, getting it going as soon as you can, a couple of those will help until, you know, emergency can get there and they can deal with it. The thing about EpiPens that's really important is when the EpiPens come, the kit, so you get 2 EpiPens and you get something that's a training pen, and you need to really practice with it to make sure you're prepared. It takes a lot of force to get that into your leg, or, you know, other parts of your body. Much more, I was really surprised. I mean, and the trainer will, you know, it doesn't activate until you get enough force. So you really need to be prepared. And the other thing is you really need to be real comfortable, because it's not really clear when you're in a panic which end the needle is going to come out of. And if you don't use enough force, that's a problem. And if it's upside down, then the needle is in your thumb. And this is not uncommon. 2 Christmases ago, I was in emergency because I had a toxic reaction to shellfish. And while we were there, the doctor was trying to do an EpiPen with somebody, and sure enough, it was in his thumb. So even medical professionals do this. So really, really practice, because if you're in the field and you're, you know, upset or whatever, it's not easy. The other thing that you should know about epinephrine is you can actually buy the vials and the needles separately, and it's cheaper that way. But there is no way you're going to be able to get a correct dose in a needle in the field if you're in a panic. So it's better to put the money into the EpiPen. And also, you know, like I said, call 911 first. That's the big thing to do. So who gets systemic reactions? Well, mostly beekeepers. That's not even a big surprise, right? Beekeepers are going to get them 2 to 3 times more than anybody else. There's not a lot of deaths from systemic reactions, although it's on the rise. I think because we're so, you know, with air pollution and other things going on, we're becoming more susceptible to allergic reactions to things. So it's really not as uncommon as we'd like it to be, but it's still pretty uncommon. And beekeepers who have never had a systemic reaction before are the ones that are most likely to get it. It's been a really strange thing. One of the guys in the Guilford County Beekeepers is a nurse in emergency, and people who have been keeping bees forever and ever and ever, all of a sudden will get a bad reaction and be an emergency. So just because you haven't had a bad reaction before doesn't mean that you're not susceptible to get one. So be prepared. That's the thing. There's info online for making your own EpiPen at about $25. Oh, okay. Okay. So anyway, so that's kind of the thing about the systemic. And then one other comment before we move on from the stings is just remember that honeybees are wild animals, even though we've kind of domesticated them. And if you get stung in the eye, you could go blind. So this is why I always wear headgear, and I require people in my bee yard to wear headgear, because I just, it's just not something you want to take a chance on. And like I said, you probably will get stung. Any questions? Any more questions about stings? Feel free to speak up. Okay, so the next thing we're going to talk about is what's under your hive. So if you've got a hive stand, some people just put a pallet down or something like that and then put their bees on top of it. But if you've got a hive stand where there's grass growing under it, you're going to have to maintain that. And so that's one of the things we really didn't talk about very much when we were talking about getting your bee yard ready, but it is something you really need to think about. So why do we care? Well, grass and weeds can harbor critters you may not want under your hives. Snakes, I have bunnies that actually nest under my hives, and that's all fine, except when you kick them, you feel really bad. And other kinds of things, lots of spiders and stuff like that. And if you have screen bottom boards, the grasses will actually come up through the bottom boards, and it's just sort of annoying for the bees. Or you can end up with something that's blocking the entrance and making it hard for the bees to get in and out of their hive. And also, if you're going to be, maintaining the space around your hive, you may want to add something to help you maintain it a little bit better. So you may not want it to just grow. I mean, you can use a weed whacker under your hives and around your hives, and that works fine. So some ideas is, you can use old carpet and just, put it under there, and then put the, if you're doing the cinder blocks and the 4x4s, or if you're doing a hive stand or something, you can just put that right on top of it, and that'll help keep the grass down. It lets water get through. Um, so that's not a bad idea. A lot of people have done that. You can use plastic garden cloth. Again, you can put that down, and I'll talk about some issues around all this in a bit. You can put down cardboard. I actually just use cardboard because it breaks down and everything. It helps keep the grass under control. It doesn't do a great job. It's not perfect, but then I only have to weed whack a couple of times a year, so that's not bad. You can do mulch or wood chips, anything to kind of help things out. You can put down pavers, and that works out pretty well. I know people that have done that, or some kind of gravel. So it's just a way of helping you to sort of keep things, to where it's easier for you to maintain it. Is there another question? So one other thing that's going to be under your hive. So these are the larvae from the small hive beetle.
Questions, solid or screen bottom board?
Oh, I prefer screen bottom board, and I'll talk about that. Let me finish this, and then I'll talk about the screen versus the solid bottom board. Okay, so this is the larva from the small hive beetle. So what we learned last time was that they're the adult hive beetle lays an egg, and it hatches, and when the larvae get big enough, they actually crawl out of the hive and into the dirt to pupate. So they're pupating either under the hive or within a few feet of the hive. They actually can crawl pretty far. So if you're, depending on what you're doing, you're going to have hive beetles in your hive. And it turns out that the carpet, they can get through the carpet. The plastic, there will be little tiny holes that they can get through. Most of the things that we put under there, they can get through. So if you're going to do carpet or plastic or something, you might consider doing something like putting some diatomaceous earth. I think the next one, you can put some diatomaceous earth, a nice layer of it, and then put the plastic or the pavers or the mulch or the carpet on top of that. And that'll be good for a while, because when they get through, then they'll get scratched up and it'll kill them. So, and diatomaceous earth, if you don't know, it's just fossilized remains of aquatic organisms, and it's silica. So it's like sand. It's, you know, in that same, it's going to scratch them up and they're going to just bleed to death. The other thing you can do is beneficial nematodes. And I use nematodes, and they're microscopic, you know, worms basically. And I've been using, I get them from Southeastern insectaries, and I've got their website there, and they're also on my website, so you can find them there, or you can just, you know, text me and I can give it to you. They're really great, and I've had really good luck with them. And what they do is they basically they basically feed on the larva, and they actually get inside and they start, you know, releasing all this stuff that basically kills it, but they also are laying and feeding on it. And you know, you get a lot more nematodes that way. Go ahead, Dana.
Well, it's actually her husband, David, but
Hi,
hey,
Dana.
we have heard that there are apparatuses that you can put on the hive entrances that limit the size of, you know, organisms that can get into the hive.
Right.
That does a good job in preventing the hive beetles. I don't know if you've used that or if you can confirm if that's a wise investment or not.
I tell you what, I use nematodes and I don't get hive beetles. So I don't have to worry too much about adding stuff to my hives and extra expenses that way. I do have friends that have different things. There's different kind of trays you can get. And then there's things, you know, as you said, there's different kinds of things you could get for the front. There's always something new coming out for the hive beetles. And it's been useful, it's helpful, but it also, they still have hive beetles. That's all I can tell you. I can maybe get 3 or 4 out of 4, at least 4 hives. I mean, it's just, I just really don't get them. So, you know, if it just depends. And I don't, you know, I've been doing nematodes since I got in this bee yard, and I haven't had any issues. So, I mean, it's just try it and see. If you send me the name of the apparatus that you're thinking of, I can put it out there to my friends and say, is anybody using this, and what kind of luck have you had? You know, a lot of people.
Sounds good.
Yeah, a lot of people inside the hive for control use something called a beetle blaster, and it looks like this. So it's got all these little holes, and it's got, you put some oil in it and you just put it between the frames, and they go in there and then they drown. And they're, you know, $1 a piece or something. And that's what a lot of people use. Or they do the trays that actually go under. I mean, this is back to the question about screen bottom boards or solid boards. I really like the screen bottom boards. What I notice, I mean, for one thing, there's so much humidity that it really seems to make a difference as far as I can tell. And the other, and in the winter, you know, you can partially close them or close them up, or, you know, if that's a concern. During the really hot, like these, I just bought 2 screen bottom boards for my Nucs because they have solid boards. You know, the bees did fine, but what I really noticed in the summertime is there's a whole, so in the summer, we'll be talking about this, but in the summer when it's really hot, the bees will go outside of the hive and do what we call bearding. So it looks like they're going to swarm or something, but they're trying to, you know, the bees inside are trying to keep things cool so it's not too hot. And so anybody that's not needed for housework is basically hanging around on the front porch, right? And it looks like a big bunch of bees out there. And the ones that I have with screen bottom boards, I see less bearding, and I just feel like if the bees are hanging out outside the hive, they're much more apt to have something go after them. You know, birds are out there all the time. We have birds that are picking them off all the time. So, you know, that's kind of why I like screen bottom boards. And, you know, stuff falls through, you don't have all the debris and everything. You know, it's just preference. And I just like them. my understanding is that a lot of the beekeepers are going back to the solid bottom boards. And mostly because they don't like to fiddle with the putting in and out. You know, there's a, a thing that slides in there that you can use to close it off. And if you're doing oxalic acid vaporization, you have to close it off. So all of that's becoming too much of a problem, and so they're going back to the solid bottom boards. But I don't do oxalic vaporization, and I don't do things that require me to do closing off the bottom board all that often. So it hasn't really been a problem. I've got a few more questions, and where's my timer?
Oh, what do you do with the time?
My assistant is falling down on the job here.
Yeah, well, I got enough seniority, you can't fight one. It says, how do you buy used nematodes?
You don't buy used nematodes.
No. How do you buy or use?
Oh, so if you go to just go to the website southeasterninsectaries.com. He's got videos of how they install. Basically, he'll set, you call him up and give him your credit card, and he'll tell you how many you need, and he'll send them to you. You tell him how big your bee area is, and he'll tell you. He's pretty good that way. He's a really good guy. He'll send you something. They come in a packet with like this gel pack thing. It's a little, little whatever, and it's they're microscopic, so you can't see them. So you're doing all this on faith, right? So then, there's a procedure where you put them like in a watering can with water, and you stir them up, and then you water them in around your hive.
You're not
And
drinking that, are you?
It's all on faith.
Probably tomorrow.
It just works. It's the strangest thing, but like I said, it just really works.
Yeah, I'm gonna drink it tomorrow.
Okay. Any other questions?
Not yet.
Okay. My cat's being bad too. Okay, so the next thing we're going to talk about is a little bit more about nukes and packages. So my big advice is watch all the videos on my Bumbling Beekeeper website before you get your packages or before you get your nukes. And you need to be ready. So you need to have your, hive bodies in your frames with the foundation if you're doing that ready. If you're going to get a nuke, you still need to have frames unless you're doing 5-frame equipment like what this is. And don't leave extra space in there because they'll build. And you also need to make some light sugar syrup for feeding them. And this time of year, you can do really light, which is just 2 parts of water to 1 part sugar. And there's all kinds of, like, people say you need to weigh it, you need to do it by weight. Just don't do that. Just do, 2 cups of sugar or 1 cup of sugar to 2 cups of water. That works fine. That'll work fine. So what you do is you heat the water first to boiling, and then just turn the stove off, add the sugar, and stir it until it's dissolved. If you continue to cook, what you'll do is you'll caramelize the sugar, and they won't eat it if it's caramelized. So do that and make sure it's cool. So do that in advance. So that's one of the things you need to do to be ready. If you're installing a nuke, what you're going to do is you're going to get a box, and so to the left of the picture down there is a wax cardboard box, and that's a lot of times what the nukes come in. There are some fancy plastic ones now. So if you're getting nukes from Brian Fisher, he does really nice plastic nuke boxes, but basically this is what you get. So it's it's a mini hive, right? So what you want to do is you want to have other frames to help fill in. So this is a 10 frame box, and what I would do is I would put maybe 2 empty frames on one side and 1 on the other, and not put all 5 in, but basically you put into, then you start taking frames from the nuke box and put them in to the woodenware, and you put them in the same order that they are. Bees kind of really care about having things be in order, and we'll be talking more about that next time too. And then you just add the other frames, being very careful. I usually put a frame in next to wherever my last nuke frame went, and then slide it over, and then I can put the other ones in. That way there's no chance I'm going to roll a queen. If we say roll the queen, in other words, when you put a frame in, if you're too close to the queen, you can get her actually falling over, or you could hurt her legs, or you could hurt her. So you really want to make sure that she's protected. So we give it some space, we put the frame in, and then we pull it over next to where the bees are, and then you add the other frames, and that's all fine. So you do that. So that's how you, I mean, putting Nucs in is pretty easy. If there's still bees in the box, just leave the box open, put it in front of the hive. You can take a stick and put it in the box, and then the other end of the stick on the landing board. And so they have sort of a ladder they can walk up and go inside. You're going to want to feed your bees. They're going to be probably drawing comb, and so you really need to feed them because they're going to need lots of food to be able to do that. Put your entrance reducer on the smallest size so that they have protection until they can get big enough to protect themselves. And after about a week, 10 days max, then you go and you check on them, and be prepared to add equipment. This time of year, they're going to be filling in really fast. And if you don't give them equipment, they're going to swarm, and then you're going to lose that really nice queen you just got. So, and they might make another really nice queen, but you really don't, you're paying for the queen, so you really don't want to do that. And you may need to move some of the frames around. I said bees like to have things the way they made it. This is the one time where we can actually move things around a little bit. So you let them be established, give them a week to get established in their new hive and do whatever they're going to do. And then we'll do something that we call checkerboarding. And this is what it looks like. So this is you can see there's like original frames in there. And then what you do is between the original nuke frames, you take one of the other frames and put it in there so that the ones where they haven't really built out yet. And that way it forces them to kind of build on it. If they've already built up and are laying in all the frames, when you add new equipment, you may want to move. If you're adding equipment that is the same size as the original box that you have, you may want to pull some frames up and put them up and do a little bit of checkerboarding up there as well. One of the things about bees and swarming is if the bees are thinking they're going to swarm, if they're starting to get tight, if they've got everything filled in, and you add a box on top of them that it's just frames with foundation, they don't see that as extra space. If there's drawn comb up there, they'll see that as extra space. But if they don't see it as extra space, they're going to go into swarm mode, and then you're going to lose half your bees. So checkerboarding is one of the things that you may have to do. So be prepared. Once you get your bees, either the packages or the Nucs, things are going to move pretty quickly. So you need to be prepared, and you need, you can ask questions and think about all these things. Okay, if you're installing a package, again, hives and frames need to be ready to go. If you have drawn comb, is it ready? Or like if you've had it in the freezer, get it out and get it thawed. If you're able to get a little bit of comb to put in, make sure you know how you're going to do that. And if you don't have drawn comb that you can add, if all you have is frames with foundation, you might consider just adding a little paper towel with a couple drops of lemongrass essential oil, or if you have Honeybee Healthy, you can put a few drops of that on. The lemongrass will make them feel like it's home, and it's also something we use as a swarm lure, and so it's a way to help keep the bees calm and keep them from absconding. And then again, be ready to feed your bees. Even if you have frames of honey, they still need to have some light sugar syrup because they're going to be building a lot of comb. And they're going to need, to have extra food. And then also, if you're getting a package, you might think about spraying them with light sugar syrup a few hours before you install them. And then if you have oxalic acid, and follow the directions. And the last directions that I got was 38 grams of oxalic acid to 1 liter of 1:1 sugar syrup. And then you could spray them lightly before you put them in the hive. And if you don't, that's, package bees are really not as likely to have varroa as like a nuke or something like that. So, and then again, feed them, with light sugar syrup. and then install the smallest entrance reducer. And then once they're in the hive and everything is all, done, we're going to do the same thing as I said to do with the nuke. If there's still bees in the empty container, you put it in front of the hive, and you can put a stick that goes from the hole where the can was in the package box, and you can put it out to the landing board so that they can just climb up there. And then the other thing is, if you're installing more than one package, you might give them a little bit, we talked about the fact that bees can actually identify, if there's markings on the hive, or if there's patterns or something, they can identify, they can see that and see if there's something different about it. So you can just take a branch and stick it near the hive, or, lean it against the hive or something to make it look different than the other hives, and you're less likely to get some drifting that way. But don't put it on, make sure it's not on the landing board, so that, or in their landing path. They need about 6 feet in front of the entrance for their landing path. So you don't really want to obstruct that at all. And the other thing about getting your bees too is make sure you've got a little bit of, today was one of those days, it's a great reminder. We were having, gusting of 40 miles an hour. So you might want to make sure that you have some kind of a windbreak behind them. If you don't have a natural windbreak of bushes or trees or something, you can always do hay bales or something like that. And especially until they get established, because it'd be really easy for them to just be off course somewhere. And with package bees, if you're doing a lot of foundation, don't be surprised. You may need to bring them food within 3 or 4 days of when you originally fed them, because they're going to go through it really fast, because they're going to be building wax really fast. Usually about 2 gallons a week is what they're going to be able to eat. So if you're doing baggy feeding, or something that's less than 2 gallons, you're probably going to need to come back and add food. And I would just come back and, give them the food and not really go in and be invasive until it's been at least a week. And then you can go in and see what it looks like, and maybe do a little checkerboarding. And, if there's frames that had foundation that they're starting to build, but not quite, move them in, those kinds of things. And then also, again, be prepared to add equipment. You will be amazed at this time of year how fast they build comb and start filling it in. It's pretty cool. It's pretty amazing. And if you give them extra space, if you don't have enough frames to fill in, they will fill in. This is somebody that they had a box that they put on, like a medium-sized box that they put on, because they were baggy feeding and they wanted to have room for the baggie and everything. But then they didn't go back. Well, the baggie ends up flat, and there's that space, and so the bee starts building comb. If they do this, that's okay. I can tell you how to fix it, and it's actually not a bad thing. And you're going to need rubber bands, and you're going to need frames, but it's pretty cool. Anyway, so that's what they'll do. So don't be surprised if you've got a 10 frame box, put 10 frames in the brood chamber. If you've got an 8 frame box, put 8 frames in the brood chamber. If you've got 5 frame, it's got to be 5. What you'll read is beekeepers in the honey supers may do 8 or 9 in a 10 frame and 7 in an 8 frame. That's different than brood area. So they will actually add a row of wax on the side. I've had bees in those cardboard nuke boxes that actually, there was enough room that they added, basically a 6th frame in there. So don't be surprised. Okay, and the last topic is just my pitch on bee community and why it's really important to have other people to talk to about bees and the things that you'll learn. So, the folks in the bee classes, You have shared understanding, you know, you're all starting from the same place. You all heard the same thing. So, you know, have other beekeepers that you can still communicate with. Elise, who did the top bar discussion, she was in my bee class in 2011. It's how I know her. Bobby, that's in this class, he did the class at Forsyth, and I mentor for Forsyth, so that's how I know him. So it's a real community. Janice, who is often in here, I don't know if she's here today or not, but the way I know her was she was selling bees to the bee school. So that's how I got to know her. And then at the club. North Carolina, there's the NC Beekeepers organization. It's the biggest beekeeping organization in the country. We have 82 chartered chapters serving the 100 counties in North Carolina. So there's people around, and you'll meet other beekeepers near you, which is really important. There's bee schools. This is kind of, you know, I do this through, you know, Permaculture Guild and Surrey Community College and other things, but you know, there's bee schools that are, you know, relatively inexpensive. You can always, I really suggest anytime you can get to a bee school, do it, because you'll continue to learn stuff, things that you don't get the first time through. All of a sudden, it's so many pieces of the puzzle coming at you that little by little will start to make sense. I think I've been through, I don't know, maybe 6 bee school classes in the 13 years that I've been keeping bees. So if you're part of a bee club, you'll hear speakers talking on the latest topics, and there's so much interesting stuff. And it's just, this is a, there's really, really great research going on, and it's pretty cool. For the, let's see, so the North Carolina State Beekeepers, their membership is $15. Some of the chartered chapters require you to be a member of the NC Beekeepers. So like Surrey Community College or Surrey Community Beekeepers, their membership is $10, but they require you to be part of the NC Beekeeper, so it's a $25. Forsyth is 10 or 15, I can't remember. But for that, a lot of these places also have honey extractors that you're welcome to check out and use. Lots of conferences. Right now they're online conferences, but there's also in-person conferences. Those are amazing. And when you go to an in-person conference, they bring in all these different vendors, and you can look at all the different stuff and talk to people, and it's really pretty cool. So we got some questions coming in.
Yeah, okay. Someone's looking for someone with top buyer experience. And it says Guilford County is offering free dues this year.
Oh, good.
And what is the name of the store in Mount Airy?
Oh, it's H&S Bee Supply. And right now they just have a Facebook page. But if you go to my website, under resources, vendors, supplies, they're listed there, and you can find their Facebook page. Okay, so here are some things that I've learned from the conferences. And this is just a little bit. So Jennifer Saruda, she was at Clemson, now she's at the University of Tennessee. And she did a whole talk on bee nutrition, which was really great. She was talking a lot about amino acids that bees need. And there are 3 plants that have nearly perfect amino acids. One of them is the mustard plant. One of them is the rapeseed, or, you know, canola. That's what they make canola oil out of them. And then the other one is the sweet clover. That's kind of the high clover. So that's really cool to know about. Mustard is also in the brassica family, and that's like kale and, you know, cabbage and broccoli and all those things. So if you have any of that stuff growing in your garden, let it go to flower, because the pollen's really, really good for the bees. One of the things that I learned, this guy, Sam Comfort with Anarchy Apiaries, I've seen him speak a bunch of times, and I've seen him sing a bunch of times because he writes songs about bees. And he's who I really learned about Warray hives. And I just saw him speak at the North Carolina State Beekeepers is doing an online conference on Wednesdays, and so I just saw him speak, and he was doing these little Warre hives where he's actually using those are bamboo skewers that you can buy, and he's he's building these little boxes. They're 11 by 11 by 11, and he uses this is, I don't even know what this is, a baggy kind of thing that he's using as like a top cover. But what he's doing now is he uses a towel on top, like a dish towel, and they propolis it, and then he puts that in moonshine and makes a tincture out of it. And then he just gets 12 by 12, like, what do you call them? The stone tiles, like you would put in, your kitchen or something. And that's what he uses as the top. And it's really cool. So I'm going to play with this. He's actually starting to do double skewers, and he does the extra long ones that are about 12 inches long. So I'm actually going to try that out. He's always so interesting. But, and like I said, he writes songs and sings songs. He's just so incredibly knowledgeable. He follows me on Instagram, and I couldn't figure out why he found me or whatever. But it's because he also started in permaculture. So we have the bees in the permaculture thing. Dr. Larry Connor, he's in Michigan. He's near Kalamazoo, I think. And he's actually the owner of Wickwaz Press now. So a lot of the bee books that are really expensive on Amazon, you can get through Wickwaz Press. And he's really, really interesting. And he's where I learned about doing notes in the hive, well, on the hive. So when I was talking about, this nice shiny top, oh, I scared the cat, that's good. This nice shiny top, I carry Sharpies in my bee jacket, and I will write some notes, and then the next time I come, I have it. I also, there's certain kinds of information I track. So if I'm requeening, I track it separate. If I'm doing treating and stuff, I track all that separately because I use that information for other things, but just for general, so that when I go back, I go, oh yeah, this is what was happening the last time I was there, right? And so we do things like this short, SQ saw queen, or NSQ for no see queen. It's not exactly great English, but it works. And if it's a no see queen, I also want to know, was there evidence of a queen? Did I see eggs? Did I see, larva? Was there some indication that she was there? And then I'll also do things like, if I do a sugar shake, I'll write down, how many varroa per 100 bees that I found, or, was there good brood? Was there good pollen? Was there good food? All those kinds of things. And I'd have all these crazy abbreviations. And I learned that from Larry. So that was one of the things at the conference, and it's really been helpful. So that's one thing. Jim too he was at Auburn and Ohio State, and I think he's still doing stuff at Auburn. He is just a funny, interesting speaker. He's amazing. And one of the things that I learned from him, I mean, I've learned a lot from him, but one of the things I learned from him had to do with trying to cut down on robbing behavior. And so, putting your hives in a horseshoe formation, or mine are kind of on an angle, or, putting some distance between them to sort of help with all that. So that's one of the things I learned from him. And he's got a website called 12.com, and you can go there. Actually, his website, the name of his site is 12B. So like 1, 2, 3. But anyway, he's funny. He's just a funny man. He's just really great. Good speaker. Dewey Caron, he actually worked with the book we're using. He was one of the editors of that. He's also one of the really best books that I have on bee biology and everything was something that Dewey wrote. He was originally at the University of Delaware. And so I feel like he's at least within our realm of the same environment. So his information has been really helpful. He's out helping with Oregon State because that's where his grandkids are. And I will make available, he actually has a post-mortem procedure that you can go through after a die out. And I'll make that available for our next class where we're doing spring and stuff anyway. And it's just a Word document with some pictures and just some things, and it's just pretty good. And he also taught me about the joy of bee vests, because he always wears bee vests. Now he's got other people who are speakers wearing bee vests. It's really a lot of fun. So, and then Doug Vinson, who is currently the president of the NC Beekeepers, he is just an amazing guy. He's just great. He's who got me to start doing overwintering nukes. And all my nukes have come through. And he also I learned about a way of making queens. It's called the MDA splitter. And we'll talk about that sometime too, or I'm going to actually be trying it in the next week. But anyway, he's just really great. And he's a doctor because he's a retired dentist. So that's always kind of fun. And then some of the people that I'm going to really miss. So the woman on the left is Jeannie Price, and Jeannie is the only woman who was ever president of the NC Beekeepers. They've been around for 102 years. And Jeannie died a little over a year ago. She was my conference buddy, and I just really loved her and learned so much from her. She would make creamed honey and stuff like that. She was just a wealth of information. And I really, really liked her, and I really miss her. And then Dr. Von Bryant just died at the end of January. And he was at Texas A&M, and he wasn't even in the apiary science, but we always sent him our honey to be able to find what the floral content was. He dealt with pollen, and he could tell you, he had done all this work, and he could tell you exactly where your bees had been foraging and what was in it. I don't even know, maybe 6 or 7 years ago, one of the beekeepers in our group said, I think this honey I have came from myrtles. And people kept saying, no, they don't forage on myrtles. So she sent it off to Vaughn, and sure enough, it was myrtle honey. So we're going to really miss him. I don't know. He was trying to get others trained in this, but he was really the only person in both, I think, North and South America who did anything like this. So he's really going to be missed. So that's just some of those people. And then I've run over just a couple minutes, but next time, we're not meeting next week. We will be meeting the week after that at April 11th. And we're going to be in the hives. We're going to be talking about going into the hives, how you handle frames, what you're looking for, how you move around in the hives. We're going to talk about spring management and what you should expect. It's really a pretty exciting time of year to be in the bees. So that's all I have for this time. And then I'll be around to answer some questions. But right now I'm going to stop the video